All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my slide presentation. Just give me a moment. All right, I think everyone, well, I haven't shared it yet. Okay, there we go. If I could just get confirmation in the chat here on Zoom that you can see my slides, that will help me ensure that everything's working properly. Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Emily. All right, let's get started. I do have my eye on the chat. I've also got it on the Q&A. So if you have questions as we go, I will try to answer them. I'll also leave plenty of time for questions at the end. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about how I use Zoom for my business. Now, I also have some personal uses for it, but today I'm just going to be talking about the business side of my Zoom use. I know that lots and lots and lots of people now use Zoom because we're in a pandemic, and there are all sorts of educational uses, schools, and then personal uses to stay in touch with friends and family. But again, I'm going to be focusing on the business side of this. I began using Zoom in 2015. So I've been accustomed to how it works for a very long time, very comfortable with it, back when it had far fewer controls and features than it does now. But it's always been a really good fit for my needs, especially when it comes to consulting. So in 2015, that's about the time I went full-time freelance. And one of my streams of income is consulting appointments with writers and publishers. So I didn't want to use Skype. It just didn't feel all that professional. It also wasn't all that reliable. I think it was sometimes hard for people to use or to join. People couldn't dial a phone number to join, like if they just wanted to join by phone only. So that's when I started looking for a solution, something that would be better than Skype. And I found Zoom on my own. I didn't really know anyone at the time who was using it. And so this worked really well for consulting appointments because it meant all people had to do to join me for their consultation was click a link that I gave them. Of course, it's a tiny bit more complicated now with Zoom because there are waiting rooms and passcodes and so on. But early on, no one was using it in this volume that people use it today. And so it was the easiest way to get someone into a meeting with me. So I've always enjoyed the ease of use. So to give you a little bit of, actually, I'm jumping ahead here, to give you a little bit of sense of how I automate this, and the automation is particularly important, just to save my time, I use something called Acuity Scheduling. Now, there are other tools out there like Calendly. There must be, I don't know, half a dozen solutions. I use Acuity, which has a lot of different features and functionality for setting up different types of appointments, free and paid, and it also integrates into Zoom. So that means when someone books an appointment, they automatically get a notification that the appointment was booked, and then they get information about how to join the Zoom meeting. It creates a Zoom meeting in my Zoom account. It automatically gets put on my Google Calendar. So there's just this really nice chain reaction of things that I don't have to do any work to do. I don't have to email the person who's consulting with me to tell them how to join my Zoom meeting because it's all built into Acuity. So this is what I wanted to show you. Yes, so just to give you a sense of what this looks like in Acuity, when people book an appointment, they get an automated email confirmation, and I can customize this confirmation however I wish. You'll notice that there are some little coding placeholders here for things like people's name, the type of appointment they've signed up for, the time of the appointment, and so on. And then since I've integrated Acuity with Zoom, all I have to do is use that little location code for the Zoom meeting link. And so again, this is totally automated, and you do not have to be particularly tech oriented or tech savvy to set this up. It's pretty much a by the book sort of template. And so when people actually get that email confirmation, it looks like the thing that you see on the right with all of the information filled out. And so that I've been doing this, for many years now, and the link always works. Now, every once in a while, there is a technical glitch. People have an old browser. They don't realize they don't have a microphone on their computer. So, sometimes there are issues, but it's almost never Zoom's fault. So that's what my setup looks like for the one-on-one Zoom consultations. Let me go back. So the other nice thing about Zoom, of course, is that it can record the meetings that you hold, assuming everyone's on board with that. You should disclose that, of course. And for my consultations, it's typically a value add that these recordings are available so people can go back and review what we discussed. So I download those locally. And then, because I don't want to pay Zoom for the storage, they do charge you for storage, and I don't want to do that. So I download them locally. It downloads a video and an audio file, and then I move those over to cloud storage. I move them over to Google Drive in my case, and then I share that link privately with the writers so that they have basically perpetual access to those recordings. I don't take them down, and I don't have to worry about them clogging up my Zoom cloud storage. So I see that in the chat here, we've got someone sharing the Acuity link. Thank you very much, Suzanne. So Acuity is indeed its own thing. It doesn't plug into WordPress. All of this is really happening off WordPress for all intents and purposes. My booking calendar is hosted by Acuity. It also hooks into my Google Calendar, which is my business calendar. And so people book based on certain rules that I've set up about when I have availability. Okay, and then Suzanne mentions you can put a link to your Acuity schedule on WordPress, which is absolutely the case. So if you were to go to my consulting schedule, if you see that little box on the right, that's what it looks like when you go to book an appointment. This form can be embedded on a website. It can be embedded on a WordPress website. You can also just use a link that people can click. It can go in an email. And it can either be hosted by Acuity or you can embed it on your own site. And I see I've got a friend who's joined me for an unscheduled appointment. Kim asks, do you have people pay you through Acuity, or how do people pay you? So that's the other really nice thing about Acuity, is that it has payment options. So you can charge people upfront. In order to book, they have to pay upfront. And they have a range of payment processors that they integrate with. So I give people the option of paying by credit card or through PayPal. And so you can hook it up with your PayPal account, with your Stripe or Square account. FYI, I really prefer Square right now because they don't penalize you if you have to give a refund, meaning you get back the credit card fees. You're not out that money if someone pays by credit card and then you have to refund them for some reason. So Acuity supports those different payment methods, and you can have it built right in. It will also issue receipts and do all these really wonderful things that, again, save you lots of time. Acuity of course, you have to pay for this, right? It doesn't come for free. So it's going to be probably somewhere around $100 to $150, I believe, per year for if it's just you and your business. It's going to be in that ballpark of cost. I think I pay $120 a year, something like that. But that includes the payment integration, which is pretty seamless to set up. All right, so moving on. The other way that I started using Zoom was to have classes. So back in 2015, I launched one of my first multi-week courses called Social Media Bliss. It was a 12-week course. And every Monday night, I had a lecture. And so there were 12 students who were premium registered students that got access to that live Monday night lecture. And so what I did is, at that time, I just distributed the private link just to those 12 students, and then they would click and join me in a standard Zoom meeting. So for those who aren't familiar, Zoom meetings can hold lots and lots of attendees. I can't remember how much the basic plan, I'm on the pro plan. I think probably up to 100 people. I don't know that I necessarily recommend having 100 people in your Zoom meeting, but it could easily accommodate 12, and that's pretty manageable. So At the same time, though, I had people enrolled in this class at a basic registration level. They did not have access to the live Monday night lecture, but they got the recording of the lecture. And so Zoom, of course, records everything if you wish. And then I made the recordings available to all students after Monday night. Okay. Victoria says, or she has a question about a project she's embarking on. She says she's going to begin interviewing people for inclusion in her next book. And many of those interviews will be conducted on Zoom, which I think is a great idea. Can I record without giving access to the interviewee? So it sounds like you want to record without letting them have access to the recording. I hope I'm understanding that correct. So yes, if you have Zoom record the interview, you can have it record locally, and then the recording will be stored on your computer. And I don't believe you have to give permission to the other party, although I'm not always so clear on all of the different functionalities of Zoom, but I'm pretty sure that if you don't want the other party on the other end to be able to record, I believe that's possible. I don't normally have, like when I have my one-on-one meetings with clients, they have to rely on me to get that recording. So I'm pretty sure they don't have that capability. I hope that answered it, Vicki. And if folks in the chat, if you're more expert on this than I am, please speak up and correct my understanding. So let's see. Emily notes that the important thing that I haven't mentioned yet, which is the pricing for Zoom. If you weren't aware, like if you've been using the free version of Zoom, which I believe gives you up to a 40-minute meeting at no cost, the one level above that is what's called Pro, and they charge you based on how many people can host a meeting. For me, there's just one host, and it's me. And I believe it's either, I think it's $150 a year, as Emily says, and I don't know if you have to pay all that in advance, or something like $15 a month. So that's what I pay. I definitely paid $150 a year for the Pro plan. If you have lots of people who need to be hosting meetings, not just you, then the price is going to go up from there based on the number of hosts you have. Suzanne mentioned she thinks only the host can record, and you can certainly set it that way in your account. So thank you for that confirmation. All right, so for the social media bliss classes, that was something that recurred on a weekly basis. It was at the same time every week. And I just want to remind folks that Zoom does allow you to have recurring meetings set up. Sometimes I see people set, for recurring meetings, they'll start a new Zoom event for every single one, which I think, I'm all about saving time, right? So if you can save your time, do it, set it up as a recurring meeting. And you'll notice I've got a screen capture here of some of the options that you've got. And then also on the right, you'll see some of the starting settings that you have with the Zoom meeting, like whether the video or audio are automatically on or off, if people can dial in by phone, which I think is usually a good idea for most meetings, whether or not participants can join at any time, if they're muted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so in 2017, I found myself in a bit of a not an unusual position, but I realized that I could start using Zoom to record my self-study lecture videos. So for instance, I was working on a how to write a book proposal course. There wasn't any live component, and I wanted to record all of the videos and then put them together into different units, like split up into like 5 to 10 minute lessons. So prior to using Zoom, my method for doing this would be starting with a software like Camtasia, where it can record you or it can record your screen, and then you edit it there in the software. I really liked using Zoom for this because it allowed me to have a screen share and have my face just in a very seamless way that didn't require extra settings or extra futzing about. So I started using Zoom to record these lecture videos. And then I would, because Zoom, of course, can record things, whether you're, in a meeting by yourself or with 15 others, it doesn't matter. I started using those files and then taking them into software like Camtasia. You could use iMovie, you could use ScreenFlow, there are lots of options out there. And then I would edit those Zoom recordings in these places to create those lectures. And the Zoom file that I would record, it might be, I don't know, let's say I would record for a solid hour, and I would have, kind of fake breaks for myself where I would, have maybe 30 to 60 seconds of silence or something before I would move on to the next part. And that allowed me to more easily edit those videos in Camtasia. Again, Camtasia is what I've been using. Not necessarily recommending that as the best solution. There are lots of solutions out there. You should use the one that makes sense for you. I think it's more affordable to use like iMovie, Camtasia, ScreenFlow than to go straight, to the most complex software, which would be like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut. There's also a pretty cool tool out there called Grain, which can help you create highlights of Zoom meetings and webinars. I haven't used it myself, but I'm really curious about trying it out because I think it would be good for social media highlights. Like if I wanted to highlight this session today, Grain would help me just take 30-second or 60-second snippets, and maybe I share those on social media. Suzanne, never mind. I see Suzanne's giving Victoria more information, so I'll just let that stand. Emily says she's heard great things about Camtasia. I find it really easy and intuitive to use. It was the first tool that I used to edit video. I think it's pretty seamless for beginners once you understand the setup. I've also used iMovie. So just depending on how you think about things, I think both can work. Jane asks, once you edited your self-study lectures, what format did you use to then present them to your students? I exported them as MP4s, which is basically the format you use when you're going to post something online, like people are going to watch them on a website, or they're going to watch them on YouTube or Vimeo, or wherever that destination is for that video. MP4 is really good for web-based video. All right. So then now we're getting more complex, right? So I'm starting with some of the easiest things, most direct things that I've used Zoom for, and it's gradually gotten more advanced and complicated as I've gone on. So in 2019, in the fall, I started doing paid webinars. Very first one I offered was 5 Steps to Your Elevator Pitch with Gigi Rosenberg. And you see, we charged $20. Now, one of the reasons I was able to do this so easily is because if you sign up for the Zoom webinar add-on, it's an additional cost. I'll talk about that in a minute. If you sign up for that webinar add-on on top of your pro account, it does have the ability for you to charge for your webinars without you having to use some other system. So for me, this was pretty attractive because I was already paying for the Zoom Pro plan. I didn't want to have to necessarily learn another system or pay or subscribe for another tool. I could just add on the Zoom webinar functionality and test it out and see if this is something I really wanted to do for the long haul. And it turns out it is something I want to do for the long haul, and I'm still happy using Zoom. So the Zoom webinar pricing, and keep in mind, this is on top of the Pro plan, which is about $150 if it's a single host. It's going to be $40 a month to have up to 100 attendees, and then $140 a month for 500. And then it goes up from there. Like you can go up to like 50,000. That would be, I'm sure, shockingly expensive. Probably doesn't apply to anyone attending today or watching, but you could go that high. So this does raise the question of, when does it make sense to pony up for that webinar plan? And I think it can be a difficult question to answer. For me, the really direct answer was I wanted to charge for some things. And it's really hard to charge just for the meeting because it means you're going to have to use some other way of registering and getting people into the meeting that I would consider time intensive. Certainly, I work with organizations that do it, have workarounds for running Zoom meetings that you have to pay for access. But there's more customer service and administration involved to do that. So I didn't want to have more administration time. The Zoom webinars really cuts down on anything that you might be charging for that uses the Zoom platform. Why Zoom webinars is also useful is that it automatically isn't going to allow people to speak. So you don't have the problem of whether people are staying muted or not. They're muted automatically. They're also not seen, so you don't have them on camera. And so generally, a good rule of thumb is the more people you're inviting in who you might not know that well, who might be strangers, the general public, the more uncertainty there is around who's coming in, the more you might want that webinar functionality rather than the meeting functionality. But there's no one size fits all here. I'm just, obviously telling you what's worked for me. If you want to have a lot of collaboration in your paid classes, you want breakout rooms, if it's supposed to be very interactive, then you're going to prefer having those meetings, and you probably won't want to do a webinar. Okay, just taking a look at what questions are coming in. Carol asks if you can show a video in a meeting with others, and yes, you can. In fact, one of my personal uses for Zoom is I have a friend who every week or so, we watch a cooking class together on Masterclass. So right now we're going through Ottolenghi's Masterclass for cooking. And, we watch, like one recipe or two. And that we use Zoom for that meeting. And then there's a way to share your video and share your audio when you do a screen share on Zoom. And so that's how we do it and watch together. It's pretty brilliant, in my opinion. Okay, so just checking the chat. Rona says, I've used DaVinci Resolve for a couple recent video projects. There's a free version, and she had a bit of video editing experience, which helps. So she recommends that. Thank you for that suggestion. And hi, Gigi, I didn't realize you would be on. It was just, I think you must have just seen. I was talking about our webinar experiment that you helped me start. Natalie asks, are you going to say something about the hardware, like the camcorder and audio system? Sure, I'm happy to speak about that. So right now, the camera that I'm using is the one that's built right into my computer. I use an iMac, so I don't have any external camera. I know there are some folks who use one, but I think it's definitely not necessary unless you have a really compelling need for higher resolution video. I know that some folks will hook up their iPhone camera to their computer because your iPhone actually might have a higher resolution camera than your desktop. But again, you would have to have a really special need for that. And I think most uses, your built-in camera works great. You'll notice that I've got this microphone here. It's pretty obvious in view. If you want to use a USB microphone, I think that's the easiest possible setup. There are Blue Yeti microphones that work well. There are some who recommend a different starter USB microphone that would cost you around $100. It's an Audio Technica 2100, I think. But look for Audio Technica USB microphone for podcasters. You'll find it. It's very popular. What I'm using is an Audio Technica that's an XLR, which means it has to plug into an audio box on my desk. And then the audio box plugs into my iMac. Now, why do I take this extra step? Mainly it's because when I was using USB microphones, there was a buzzing feedback that I was getting in my recordings that just felt like it was lowering the quality of what I was doing. And for me, rich audio, clear audio is really important. And so that's why I made the switch. I didn't want any possibility of interference, which I seem to be getting with my current computer USB. So what I'm used, like I always end up sending people information about my audio setup, but I know that I think my current microphone and audio box are actually sold out on Amazon. So I don't know that I would necessarily encourage you to go and duplicate my setup. But in any event, it is an Audio Technica microphone that plugs into a Scarlett Solo USB box, which is a cherry red color. So that's my audio setup. But again, any USB mic like a Blue Yeti, should probably be fine for most people. DA asks, how do you handle copyright clearance issues with media you might use in webinars? Typically the only media I'm using, it's media that I've created or that would be Creative Commons. I'm not showing masterclasses in my webinars. I do that for personal non-commercial use. I'm not doing that professionally. That would be against the law, or it would infringe on masterclass and they would come after me. So anything that I show in terms of slides or images, things of that nature, music, background music, it's something that I've either gotten permission or it's Creative Commons and I don't need permission. Roy asks about lighting, which is another great question. So fortunately, of course, you can't see this, but my office setup allows for really great natural lighting. I'm facing a window and I also have a window over here to my left. And so as long as, it's a reasonably sunny day, or even if it's cloudy, most days I have enough light that I don't need an additional source of lighting in the room. I do have some overhead lights that are turned on right now, but most of the lighting you're getting is from the natural light coming in through the window. If I am presenting later in the day, or if it's particularly cloudy or stormy, I do have a light that's mounted above my computer. It's about, I don't know, maybe 10 feet away from me, maybe not even, no, not 10 feet. I'm really bad at judging distances. Let's say 6 feet, 5 feet. I don't know. Mark needs to come on and tell me how far this thing is away from my face. It's not that far. And it's a really kind of just small square light that is powered by battery. So if I need that source of light on me, I just go and click it on. And it's not connected to my computer. It's not connected to anything else. It's just sitting there in case I need it. I think it cost me $100. You can get all sorts of lights like this off Amazon or your local photography shop. It doesn't need to be fancy. I know some people really like the ring lights. Try a ring light if you want. But I wanted something that, I don't know, I didn't need something that fancy, I guess. Victoria asks, do you recommend headphones like the ones that I have? She likes wearing, she wears hearing aids, so audio is sometimes a challenge. I use headphones so that if I'm in a meeting, I'm not bothering Mark, who's in the office down the hall. It also tends to help avoid audio interference. But for a webinar like this, where there's not really, like, you guys aren't talking to me, I could safely take the headphones off and everything would be fine. It's very unlikely there would be any interference, but I'm very accustomed to it. And it also helps filter out the noise from elsewhere in the house, like cat meowing. So I'm maybe less distracted. There are also some really nice noise canceling headphones that Mark uses that really blocks out other sound. So if you are in an environment where there might be a lot of distracting noise, that might also be useful for you. I will mention that the standard Apple earbuds, the ones with the microphone in the wire, are actually really quite good. You can improve your audio tremendously just by using that microphone in your Apple earbuds if you're an Apple user and you have a pair. Okay. So just taking a look at what's going on in the chat. MJ Williams asks, what's the name of the audio box? So the one that I have is a Scarlett Solo. It's a Scarlett Solo box. It also says Focusrite on the top. So that's Focus, RITE. So it has a place to plug in my microphone. It also allows me to turn up or down, how much volume is there, and it has some other features that I couldn't explain to you. Marjorie asks, how difficult is it to test or preview while on the learning curve so that you don't embarrass yourself too much with an audience? Fortunately, with Zoom, if it's a webinar plan that you have, everything can start in what's called practice mode. So in practice mode, anyone can, whether it's you, panelists who are joining, you can get together and test out the audio, the video, your setup, and make sure that everything looks good before you start broadcasting. So this would be for anyone who's hosting or anyone you've invited as a panelist. So that could be just you, it could be 2 people, it could be 6 people. Again, it's whoever's not an attendee has access to that practice mode and can give it a try. So that's really helpful for the webinars. For the meetings, I don't know of any practice mode, but certainly you don't have to let anyone in until you're ready. So if you use a waiting room functionality in Zoom meetings, then you can just let people sit in the waiting room until you're ready to go live. Emily asks if I have recommendations for headsets. She uses her iPhone earbuds with the Blue Yeti, but she's heard that's not the best option. I think it's a great start, but the headphones I have are not anything special. The ones that Mark has, the noise canceling headphones, are quite expensive. I think they're $300 to $400. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend them unless you're really ready for that sort of investment. But I don't know that it matters too much as long as they feel comfortable for long periods. Like I can wear these for 2 or 3 hours and, I think nothing of it. So you want something that you don't feel compelled to futz with, and that just feels natural. Suzanne notes that if you have a ring light and you wear glasses, you get rings reflecting in your glasses. So I guess I'm extra happy I did not go with a ring light. Let's see. Gigi is wondering what noise canceling headphone Mark uses. I'll see if I can get his attention. Let's see. Let's see how effective I am. Oh, I hear him coming up the stairs right now. All right, please come in. Everyone's interested in these headphones.
Hello there. These are the Sony WH-1000X M3.
WH-1000.
WH-1000X M3.
XM3?
Yes, I need 1,000.
Sony?
100. 1,000.
1,000. Okay. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So for those of you who are in the Zoom webinar with me, and I'll post this on Facebook as well for those who are watching through Facebook, Mark's noise canceling headphones are the Sony WH-1000 XM3. And Suzanne votes for the Bose noise canceling headphones. And I've heard great things about those too, but as we're warning, they are expensive. So be prepared. So back to the Zoom paid webinars. Like I mentioned, one of the really attractive features of using Zoom as a webinar platform is twofold. One is that it integrates right into PayPal without you having to know, learn, or do a thing. You just tell it your PayPal account and you can charge registration. Easy peasy, assuming you're a PayPal user. If you're not, this might compel you to become one because it's that simple. The other really huge advantage here, and I do mean it's huge, is that Zoom does not take a percentage of your fees. So you keep every bit of that $25 minus the PayPal fees, which are like 2.9% or thereabouts. So I don't know if you've been shopping around for other webinar platforms, but if you have, you'll know that some of the popular ones take a cut of your registration fees on top of the monthly fee that they're charging you. So since I am all about profit margin, I really love this setup. And I think it's awesome that they're not taking a cut of the registration fee. PayPal is, of course, but Zoom is not. So when you set up the webinar and you've got the registration here, you check your boxes and it produces a webinar registration form that has a pay and register button, and it takes people to PayPal to make that payment. So I actually don't use this setup anymore. And that's because Zoom broke me. When was it? Earlier this year or during the, was it last year? I think it was in the fall of last year. I had a webinar that It was the first webinar I did that sold out at 500 people. And the registration broke midway through the registration period, meaning that if people paid, they weren't getting added as a registrant. And I won't go into all of the gory details of this, but I never, ever wanted that to happen again. The problem did get resolved, but it wasn't because Zoom resolved it. It's because I found some workarounds. And so then I decided I was not sending people through Zoom again. Now, I realize I've just really talked up the PayPal integration. I think what I experienced was just one of those little tiny anomalies that you are very unlikely to experience yourself. But for me, it was just, I decided it was the impetus I needed to find a different method. I also had people complaining that they weren't PayPal users. They hate using PayPal. Couldn't I offer a credit card option? And so I couldn't do that unless I started registering people in a different manner. So now I use my WordPress-based website. I use Gravity Forms plus Zapier in order to register people for webinars. Now, this might sound a little tricky or complicated. It's not really, but it does require connecting things, like connecting 3 different systems, which could be intimidating to someone who's not done it before. But if you already have a WordPress site, this could be a very attractive option. So essentially what I do is I've already been a Gravity Forms user for years and years. This is a plugin, a WordPress plugin that you pay for. I think I pay $160 a year or something like that. I use Gravity Forms all over my site, so I don't use it just for this. So I create a registration form using Gravity Forms. It has payment integration. And then I set up things so that as soon as someone completes the registration form, it adds a new webinar registrant to Zoom magically in the background without me doing anything. I don't lift a finger. It just happens like magic. Really, it is magic. It feels that way. And as I mentioned, people can use either a credit card or they can use PayPal. So the way that I make this Gravity form speak to Zoom is that I use a third-party tool called Zapier. And so Zapier is used for lots and lots and lots of things. It's like a little communication nugget that you can use for all sorts of tasks. If you've never heard of it before, you're in for a treat because you might find your life is greatly aided once you learn about all of the different things that Zapier can do to automate your online life. So essentially, I don't have a demonstration of this since it gets into a little bit into the weeds, but if we have some time, I'll do a little screen share of Zapier and show you a little bit of the back end of how this works. But essentially, I just tell Zapier, hey, when you see a new webinar registrant come through this form, I want you to put them into the Zoom webinar that they paid for. Thanks. And it just happens. All right. I see that DA mentions in the Q&A box that he or she recommends Bose Quiet Comfort 10, which is an old model, or 35, the new model, and you can get them on sale through deals now and again on Ars Technica. So thank you for that tip, DA. Taking a look at the chat again, let's see. Suzanne mentions Gravity Forms is good, and that she uses it for ticket sales when she managed a community orchestra, and she also agrees that Zapier rocks. So yeah, definitely, if you're a WordPress user, someone who's self-hosting, meaning you're using Bluehost or SiteGround or GoDaddy or one of these companies to host your site, then you can use plugins and tools like these to automate a lot of stuff that just makes your life easier. Oops. All right. And then finally, during our pandemic year, I started doing these free webinars, these business sermons, and then live broadcasting them to social media. So I'm able to broadcast this either to Facebook or to YouTube, or I could choose some other place. Like I could even live stream it on my website if I knew how to, if I knew the technical steps to do that. I choose to do it on Facebook because that's where I have the larger following. And then the stream is saved on Facebook It's up to you. You don't have to have it saved on Facebook. You can also save the recording locally. You can make it available through Zoom. There are lots of different options there. There's also a tool, I'm not going to remember the name, unfortunately, but for those who subscribe to my newsletter, Electric Speed, I mentioned this tool earlier this year. It's something that allows you to live stream to like 3, 4, 5, 6 different platforms at once from your Zoom meeting. So in the live streaming bucket here, you would put in the URL of this third-party service, and it would then broadcast out to all of these other places for you. I apologize. I can't remember the name. If anyone in the chat or the Q&A can remember the name, please drop it in. But that could be really useful if you want to hit a lot of places at once. So a similar or a comparable service that's not Zoom that does that is Crowdcast. So if you've already got a Zoom Pro account and you've got the webinar functionality, then you can get into some of the more interesting things related to live streaming. All right, so that's it for today. We still have about 20 minutes for questions. I'll just mention that, as I've discussed, I obviously have paid online courses. You can find those at my website under the online classes tab. And I already have another Sunday sermon planned for April 25th on how I market my stuff. So how do I get people into my paid classes? How do I get people to book consultations? So I'll talk about how my marketing has grown and evolved and changed over the years. So I'm going to stop the share, get some water. Mary asks, when you have paid classes, do you suggest having the cutoff date for registering be the day before you go live, or allow registration up to the time the course begins? It's a wonderful question. I put a big priority on letting people register up until the very last minute, because that's when a lot of the registrations, in fact, happen. So there's always a huge rush of signups in the last 24 hours. I have worked with other organizations that turn off the registration about a day in advance, and I know they're losing a lot of students as a result. We're just, I don't know, we're all last minute procrastinating creatures. So I think you're definitely leaving money on the table if you're cutting off registration, unless you absolutely have to. Now, I understand why some do it. It's because they don't have these automated systems set up like I do, which would allow for the moment a registration occurs, an email is sent with the information to join the webinar. So if someone registers for a webinar that I'm hosting at 1 p.m., they're going to get the link to join usually within 2 minutes, definitely within 5 minutes, assuming nothing weird has happened. So it's really instantaneous for the most part. If people don't get it right away, usually something's gone wrong. So for that reason, I leave it open. And in fact, with another thing that happens with webinars, if the webinar has been popular, people end up talking about it on social. And so with the Zoom webinar functionality, you can actually keep a registration open for something, paid or not, after it ends. So this is also really powerful in just making each thing that you run more profitable, generate more money, because the conversation that happens afterwards can still lead to more students who are happy to have the recording, assuming you're making the recording available, and I do. So again, that's a great question, Mary, because it's something that I've learned over the past year that the more time you can leave that open, the better it is. And if you're not manually adding people to your Zoom meeting or to your Zoom webinar, then I think you should leave it open as long as possible. All right, checking the chat here. Oh, it looks like Mark texted me the name of the service. I could not remember. Thank you, Mark. So the service is Restream. So that's at restream.io. So if you're curious to know the tool, Mark is reminding me that, which has a robust free plan, which is bonus. It allows you to broadcast your Zoom event to multiple platforms at once. And then you can also use the Restream platform itself to broadcast if you don't have a pro Zoom account. So again, I would really check that out if live streaming is of interest to you. Emily mentions if I was trying to think of StreamYard, that wasn't it, but StreamYard is another interesting service to take a look at if you just want to explore all of the different tools out there. Marjorie says, is my understanding correct that if you use Gravity Forms and Zapier, there's no need to use PayPal to process payment? I guess the payment question is outside of that discussion. So it's up to you to decide what payment methods you want to offer. Using Gravity Forms and Zapier, it will work with whatever payment system you set up. So if you have it set up with Stripe, it'll work. If you have it set up with PayPal, it'll work. If you have it set up with Square, it'll work. Or if you have it set up with 2 different options for payment, like I do, it will work. I make both PayPal and credit card options open or available because I have a good number of people who need and want both. So especially people who are overseas, they really like having that PayPal option, whereas other folks hate PayPal with a passion and refuse to use it. So I've found it a best practice to offer both. Annette says, am I going to send out a replay of this Zoom session? I don't send out replays of these free Sunday sermons because the recording is captured on Facebook, and so they're all saved to Facebook. I will do a screen share here to show a little bit more behind the scenes and show you how you can find those recordings. So at the Sunday Business Sermons page, right here, you'll see links to all of the recordings from 2020, and then there's the 2021 session, upcoming sessions. So if you just click on any of these, you will immediately jump to Facebook and you can watch the recording. You don't have to be a Facebook user in order to watch. It's kind of like watching something on YouTube. And if Facebook prompts you to join, just click not now. You can still watch it, even if you don't have an account. Since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to jump into the Zapier backend so you can see what's happening here. So this is showing the Zap history. I've got 3 Zaps set up, which is basically 3 automations with 3 different webinars that are currently open. The Williams webinar is actually closed. We should, in fact, turn this. Oh, it is turned off. You can see it's this Zap is off, but it's still sitting here. So this just shows you it's a log of the different Zaps that you've set up and that are being used. And it shows you the last time it was triggered. So you can see that some of these were triggered quite recently because they're webinars that are currently accepting students. So yeah, it does cost you to use Zapier. There is a free plan. I quickly had to level up to what you here is the starter plan, 1,500 tasks, because each task is a webinar registrant. So you can imagine if I have hundreds of webinar registrants in a month, that quickly necessitates having up to 1,500 tasks. All right. And then just to show you, here's Gravity Forms website. If you're curious about exploring it, the cheapest entry-level option is at $59. But you usually have to level up to something a little more expensive because you want the payment add-ons. So Gravity Forms allows you to integrate payment methods, and you really want those payment methods. So here you can see on the Pro, which is more expensive, you get the PayPal integration, Square, and Stripe. And I just want to put another shout out to Square again for not penalizing you when you have to make a refund. So if you're using Square, if you're using PayPal and you're charging for anything and you have to do a refund, you don't get the credit card fees back, which is 3% per charge, roughly. Whereas with Square, they will give you those fees back for refunds. Right. And then just to show you what the Gravity forms look like on the back end, once the form is completed, it shows you the people who have registered. And then you can also look at sales like this, and it'll show you when people are registering. All right. Stop the share. MJ asks, to encourage late registrations, she's asking, do you not leave your recordings on your Facebook page? So the perk is to receive the recording once they register. So let me clarify the different ways that I'm using Zoom webinars. I've got free sessions like this one. No one had to pay to access this. I also broadcast it live on Facebook. It's free. Anyone can engage with me here in Zoom, or they can watch it on Facebook after the fact. So free for all. But I'm not going to put any additional manual work into preparing a recording because it's free. And I only put work, or I should say Mark puts work into preparing a recording for the classes that have registration fees. So when people register for a paid class, whether or not they attend live, they get the recording, and then that recording is sent to them about 3 days after the fact, and it's prepared. So it also comes with a transcript of the session, which brings me to another functionality of Zoom I haven't touched on yet, which is if you're on a pro plan, Zoom has married up with Otter AI, which is a transcription service that creates a live transcript for your meetings or for your webinars. So for instance, I didn't turn on auto transcription for this session, but I have just now turned it on so you can get a live demonstration. You can hide the subtitles once they're turned on, or you can open up the full transcript, which is off to the right. So if I were being much more conscientious, I would have turned that on right away, but sometimes I don't remember, especially on a weekend where my brain is a little more relaxed. So for anyone who is looking for that, I apologize. There it is. I'm going to close the transcript because it's awfully distracting for me, but you can go take a look if you're curious. How well people use Patreon. So for those who aren't familiar with Patreon, it's a patronage sort of platform where people can donate or fund your projects on a monthly basis. Usually you set up pledge levels where if people pledge X amount, they're going to get X in return. For those who are freelancers, you might be interested in a particular Patreon called the Writers Co-op. It's for freelance writers. They have a really ingenious Patreon model going that helps fund their podcast and classes and all sorts of other good things. So that's one area to take a look at if you're curious how writers are using it, and also to get education if you want it on freelancing. I've seen poets and science fiction writers and literary novelists and musicians and artists all use Patreon effectively. I'm not saying I'm not going to use it, but I haven't found something that I offer yet that I think would really benefit from the Patreon model, but it's definitely something I watch and am thinking about. A similar model would be maybe Substack, where people are paying for your writing on a regular basis. But it's a very specific type of writing that they're paying for. It's your newsletter. So I do offer the Hot Sheet, a paid newsletter, which it's not a Patreon. I mean, I'm asking people to subscribe to something that I've assigned a value to, whereas Patreon is a more pay what you like or show your support, more a flexible platform. All right. Karen is asking, how do you spell Patreon? Karen, you spelled it exactly right. So it's Patreon. Emily says, I believe for Zoom, you need the business option, $200 a year for transcription. Is that correct? Well, if that is correct, I've gotten away with something because I get it on the pro plan. I didn't have to do anything except enable it. So let me go take a look here. I'll log into Zoom and just see if I can find the setting, and I can show you where it is. Let's see. Give me a second to bring it up. There we go. I'm going to share my screen. So for those who are curious where this lives, if you log into your Zoom account and you go to the settings, look under closed captioning right here, and just check the box and enable live transcription service to show transcript on the side panel in meeting. But you have to turn on the closed captioning for this checkbox to be here. The other thing you can do, which is really cool, is once the meeting ends, you have the option to save that transcript. And so you can then make it available after the fact to anyone who wants it. And for those who are thinking about paid webinars, it's a huge value add and really necessary for accessibility to have a transcription that will also help with the closed captions. And if you're on a pro plan and you have the webinars added, you're going to have access to this. It's so easy just to turn it on. And then Mark would be able to speak to the more technical aspects of this, because sometimes I can't remember exactly how it works. But essentially what happens, I believe, is that even though we've got the closed captions in the live session and also that transcript, we've found it really useful to upload our audio file of the session of the webinar, upload that audio file to Otter separately. We have an Otter account that we pay for. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we then use that to help with the closed captions on the video that's prepared after the fact. And so we've got, that just allows us more accurate closed captions for those who are watching the recording. I hope I got that right. And if I didn't, Mark will definitely tell me. But we've changed our methods a couple times. But for those who are interested in that, you want to have closed captions on your videos, and you're curious about the steps involved, send me an email and we'll make sure that we get a set of steps over to you. I see that Mark is texting me the proper information. And he said, yes, my description was correct. So yay. And he mentions also Otter only transcribes English, US, UK. So if any of you are presenting in other languages, I guess you'll have to find another service for that. Let's see. Mary asks, are there any tips on allowing the Zoom chat and/or Q&A features? I mean, so far my experience with these interactive bits of Zoom, both meeting and webinar, have been very positive. It's very rare that I would run into like a bad actor who either dominates or does something that would be abusive. Knock on wood, I hope that continues. So with Q&A in particular, I like to keep, for webinars, this is only webinar functionality, the Q&A box. I like to make questions visible to all attendees because it allows attendees to comment on people's questions. I think is really useful interactive feature. People can see the questions when they're answered. You can also allow upvoting on the questions, which again, if you have a very popular session with lots of questions coming in, I think it's nice to have a little bit of crowdsourcing of what questions are of most interest to people. So allowing the upvoting is useful. So I would recommend that using the Q&A box functionality for sure on webinars. It also keeps things out of the chat that you need to focus on and address as part of the formal presentation. And then chat's just great for attendee to attendee interaction. Sometimes the chat is just as valuable to people who attend meetings or webinars, either one, because there's networking and, oh, here's my website, or follow me on Twitter, or let's do stuff together, after the class. So people find writing friends and critique group partners and other folks that are useful to them in their journey. So interesting connections get made in both places. Gigi asks, how do you think this transcription would work for interviews? So if I'm interviewing someone and want to have the transcript as a backup or to refer to later. I use it for that too. I did not mention that, but it is phenomenal because especially if you're uploading to Otter separately, which I do, it identifies who the speaker is. So it's really smart, and it can separate different speakers in the transcript. And obviously you can click on anything, although you may not know this if you don't use Otter, but you can click on any part of the transcript and it will immediately play the audio for you. So like if the transcript is garbled or it doesn't make sense, you can listen to the audio again. It's just wonderful in saving time and helping you find exactly what you want. Like that part in the interview where they mentioned the Cocteau twins. You can type in Cocteau twins or something, and jump to that place right away without having to scrub through the transcript or the audio. Krista mentions she uses Otter for transcribing interviews. She has the Pro plan, and then she connects to the Otter app. You just need to save the Zoom interview to the cloud. Thank you for mentioning that, Krista. I had almost forgotten that that's possible. So the Otter does have a free version, and I think there's maybe a limit of 600 minutes a month or something, but if you hook it up to your Zoom account, the two services obviously talk to each other. That's one way to make your interviewing more efficient. You don't even have to upload your file to Otter separately. It just automatically transcribes. Marjorie says, I'm not a techie, so how do you recommend learning to use and integrate these techs effectively? Do they offer tutorials? Do you need to have some sort of technical support person? Well, certainly, I wouldn't recommend diving right in at the end here, like with the webinars and the WordPress registration. That's not going to be the right solution for everyone, what I showed you here at the end. You want to start with some of the tools that Zoom offers to you as part of its service rather than getting overly complicated from the start. So certainly Zoom has endless tutorials about itself, and there are lots of people who talk about how to use Zoom on YouTube, educators, business people. And so I would try to find someone who's like you, has a use case that's like yours, depending on what you want to do with it. And then look for their guidance, or whether it's YouTube videos or articles about how they've got their setup. It does help if you have a younger person around who can maybe show you hands-on how to do something in your particular environment. So there are clearly a lot of variables. Are you a Mac or PC? What's your microphone or web camera setup? And some things that might have to be troubleshooted by someone who might know a little bit more than you or is very comfortable navigating these softwares. Okay. DA mentions that the Otter feature with the speaker ID comes with a paid subscription, or that's their thought, that maybe that info is out of date. That's one of the tricky things about talking about these services, and probably is a frustration to Marjorie, is that the plans change, the pricing changes, the functionality changes, and so it's even hard for me to keep up with what features go with what plan. So not that it's necessary for me to apologize for that happening, but it's something that you just come to expect and you deal with. Having people that you can talk to and see what their experience is like in this session is clearly helpful. Finding Facebook groups, finding support groups. A lot of these technologies have places that you can go, communities that you can join, where you can put questions out there and maybe get assistance. All right, so we're a few minutes past the hour. I'm going to go ahead and close down the session, but as I mentioned, you can get the recording after the fact through my Facebook profile, and I also share all of the recording links to all my sermons at my website at the Sunday Business Sermon landing page. So do visit that. You can also go back and watch the old ones if you're so inclined, and I hope to see you all again in April 25th for How I Market My Stuff. Thanks all. Have a wonderful weekend and happy spring. Bye-bye.